I've been looking forward to this chapel for a long time. Our speaker this morning has a testimony that rings true and goes deep. There are a few people that God brings into your life whom He has taken through deep, deep waters and has matured at levels that many of us may never reach. But they in turn become a blessing, a challenge, and by their very lives end up mentoring us through that model. Such is the case with our speaker this morning. He's one of our President's Council members who has stood alongside of the seminary for years. He has been faithful in his family, faithful in his church. John Paine is the president of Providence Interactive Capital. He is a private investor who serves as president of that company and holds executive and board positions at several companies. His primary ministry focus is mentoring men. Church leaders and laymen alike enjoy his focus of walking with God. He's best known for being a husband to his wife of 31 years, a father to his 4 adult children who love Jesus, and a grandfather of 5. He's an avid reader, a scuba diver, and enjoys, as he says, most normal guy activities. By way of introduction, I want you to welcome him in just a moment, but I want to show you a clip that was taken off of a telethon, a recent telethon that was filmed here locally, and I think it will best introduce what God is doing in his life before he comes to share that in more detail. Watch this, and then would you join me in welcoming our brother, dear friend John Paine, to our chapel this morning.
John has ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, as many of us know it. It's slowly stealing all the muscles in his body. But John will show you now that ALS has not stolen his spirit.
Well, morning, gentlemen. Morning. How's everyone doing today?
John Paine still walks with the swagger of a powerful man in control.
Stephen, would you mind grabbing my glasses? Yeah, just stick it right in there. There we go.
But John's hands and arms aren't what they used to be. The athletic arms that could once easily lift wife Margaret, haul in a big catch, keep up with the boys on land, on the road, and under the sea, climb the tallest and roughest mountains, and ski the steepest slopes, are now severely weakened by ALS. But John finds his strength from a higher source.
Lord Jesus, we just invite you here to be with us this morning.
Here's a man who has every reason to be angry, his body being slowly stolen from him at age 52. But John Paine is not angry.
We just open our hearts to you.
Instead, he leads a group of men in prayer, mentoring them in their search for the answer to that all-troubling question. What is the meaning of life?
His mission here, and put it in my layman's terms.
John is a living paradox. His friends have watched the successful businessman lose so much in so little time.
You will find the clarity of life that you've been looking for.
But John tells them they just fail to see what he has gained.
When we eliminate the clutter in our lives, it's so much easier to hear God speak to you.
This is what's really important in life.
Perspective is what Josh Paine says ALS has given his dad, and son John agrees.
He used to spend time working and becoming successful, and you'd hear the great stories of all the neat things he was being involved with. It went from that to, instead, he was spending time with us and with other people.
Youngest daughter, Hillary.
I've seen such a change in him that I want to be like him. I want to have what he has. He has God.
But time is passing quickly now for John.
Wait a second. Where's the strong dad that I always knew?
Daughter Amanda, pregnant with twins, admits her frustration.
It never crossed my mind that I would have children that my dad would never see.
Who is this?
Oh, yeah.
Amanda's little girl Ainsley got here in time to enjoy her grandpa, and her twin sisters on the way will likely do the same, as did John's twin grandsons. But John is not watching the sand pass through the hourglass. Oh no.
Let's roll.
He's too busy teaching others the meaning of life.
Come on, boys. Let me show you the way.
I wouldn't want to not have what we have today.
That's right.
Even as a family, we've bonded so much more. We've learned that dependence isn't a weakness.
I look so much bigger there. I don't know what happened, but here we are today. I wanted to start by thanking my wife for being here today with us, Margaret. And I know you don't like to stand up, but I thought while they were doing the sound check on this, hi. Hi, yes. And you'll find that I never like putting anyone on the spot. And so, in accord with that, Luke, be good to my youngest daughter. Okay. He's dating my youngest daughter. I had to say something. Well, anyways, y'all keep an eye on him for me, would you? It's good to be here today to share with you. I must admit, though, I am a bit nervous. I like sharing with small groups of men, and that's my sweet spot. But today we're going to expand this group, and I'm just going to play like you're a small group here with me today. You're probably wondering what a Dallas businessman is doing sitting here in front of you. I'll prove to you today before this is over that I'm not a theologian, and I'm no Bill Gates, and I'm not an orator. Hello. I'll prove that to you. But what I'd like to do today is just share with you from my heart a walk with God. We're going to do so. I want to start by having us open our books. No, I'm sorry. That's what you're used to hearing. I am going to open a book today, but it's going to be a book on my life. And so I would like to start by probably starting later in the book instead of from the beginning. We're going to turn to maybe chapters 37 or 38 in the book. And I'm going to give you a view and a glimpse of some of my life. I think a good place to start is at UT Southwestern Med School. Just a few years ago, I am frustrated because I have a strong body and I eat well and take good care of myself, and I am struggling because I'm losing some strength in one of my arms, my left arm. And it was irritating me, and more than anything, the doctors were, because they wouldn't tell me anything. They just kept running tests, and after weeks of tests, they finally came in the room. And, I'm sitting there in, the gown. And we all understand the gown. A little exposed, and anyway, I was sitting there, and I've got my cell phone because I was just tired of being in the hospital, and so I'm on the phone, and I'm in the middle of a deal because we're about to leave on a trip. Margaret and I are, and I'm on the phone, and I just decided these doctors could wait just a little bit. They put me through so much waiting, I'll make them wait just a bit. So, but I noticed that none of them had smiles on their faces. And so I thought I had waited enough time. And I hung up, and I looked at the doctors, and I'm pretty jovial, and I was ready to start joking with them, but they weren't smiling, and they weren't joking. And Dr. Nations looked at me and said, "John, you have, we believe, preliminary diagnosis of ALS." And I'm just, okay, what are we going to do about it? And she goes, "Well, it's amyotrophic lateral sclerosis." I said, "Okay, now what are we going to do about it?" And she said, "John, it's Lou Gehrig's disease." Well, in a flash, I realized that things didn't work out so well for old Lou. And I will tell you that the thoughts that began to enter my mind as they described that my motor neurons in my brain were dying, and when they died, so did my muscles. And that very soon, within 3 to 5 years, that I would be dead. And it was shocking. You don't become a paraplegic. You become a paraplegic from the hair down, not the neck down. And it just, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. And quite frankly, she gathered up and left so that I could get dressed. And I just looked over at my wife, Margaret, and just said, "I'm sorry." It was all I could muster. They came back in and tried to tell me some other things about the disease and support groups and helps and all sorts of things, but I couldn't pay attention. I mean, it was just mumbling. So the next thing I can remember is we're driving home. And I can remember this surreal look. Everyone is out there enjoying having a wonderful life. And my life just went to pot. Or so I thought. So I get home, my poor wife goes upstairs, and I go to my study, and I close the door. And as I'm driving home, I'm getting angrier with God. And I'm in my study, and I'm angrier with God. I said, this just can't be happening. We had come through so much. We had been through our trials and tribulations in life. We'd had some difficult times in our lives. We had a daughter with an eating disorder, and it was devastating to us. I had a business failure, and all of this was in just the last few years. And we'd had some struggles in our marriage, and we'd come through. And we just had come back and come through so many things. A son almost killed in an automobile accident. A number of things that had happened to us. But we were on the positive side of all of these. And so life was supposed to be getting good. And here, this diagnosis. Could not believe it. So I became angry with God, and I began to lash out at him. Because it just wasn't fair. And we all know life is supposed to be, oh, not y'all, fair. Okay. It's supposed to be. Y'all know it's not. Okay. So we haven't learned that yet, though, have we? So, okay. Well, I found out a few things that day. I found out, number one, is that God can take it, and he took it. And as I sat there in the still, small quietness of the twilight of the afternoon, a small voice inside of me, "Are you done yet? Are you done yet? You know we're going to be spending a lot of time together, John. Maybe it's time you listened." Even I know when it's time to shut up. Even I know when it's time to listen. So I did. I began to listen. God impressed upon me 3 things that day. And I wish we had time for all of this, but I'm just going to hit some highlights. I'll tell you that God began to tell me to gain his perspective. He told me to gain his perspective, to stand on his promises, and His truths. He told me to trust in His provision. As I gained His perspective, and began to gain His perspective, I said, well, how does that happen? He said, John, what's going on in your life? I said, oh, a lot of things are going on in my life. Let me tell you about it. And I began to talk about all the family things going on in my life. And I began to talk about all the things that were going on in the ministry and the church and Bible study and all the different things that I was involved with and the deals and that I had going on and all the responsibilities that I had in various ministries and parachurch ministries, and I had goals to accomplish, and I had all this stuff to do that needed to be done that I was responsible for. And I'll tell you what happened that day. I have a set of 3x5 cards right down here on the rail, and it was like that was the tabletop of my life. And God came over. If I move, is it okay? No, okay. If God came over and all of these activities that I was involved with, it was just, and He cleared the tabletop of my life. And everything went on the floor. Everything went. There was nothing left. Nothing left but Him. So He came back and He put Himself back on the tabletop of my life. That was all. And He said, we've got to get that straight before we can go forward. Can't go anyplace else until that's straight. And we got that straight there that evening. And I said, you see, what I didn't realize is that I knew that God was first place in my life. I've taught that for years. But I didn't know how many things had creeped in and started to compete with God. And they were competing with God for His time, for His adoration, for His glory. I have clue. At the time, I was blind to it. I saw it for the first time as I began to gain His perspective. You know what came next? He said, okay, I need to pick up Margaret and bring her back because she was on the floor too. And so He said, okay, let's get Margaret. So we got Margaret. And I began to bring her up and he said, oh, no. She can't go on the tabletop of your life again. Let's put her in a chair real close. So we put her in a chair real close. And we brought her up. So, honey, you're not on the floor, okay? And got real close. And guess what? He said, she's going to love being there. She's going to so love being there because this time things are going to work differently. You see, John, I'm going to love you. And I'm going to love you with my love and my unconditional love. And it's going to be a love that you've never experienced before. And guess what? When you have my love flowing into your heart, you're going to love like you've never loved before. You're going to love like you've never loved before. As a matter of fact, that's the next perspective that He gave me. It's a new perspective on His love for me that I had never understood before. I had heard about it. I preached on it, but I had never really experienced it before. And it was a love that began to just blow me away. Because it was a love that was accepting. It was a love that was all-encompassing. It was a love that I really couldn't hardly even comprehend because of the vastness of His love for me. Because He began to see that He pursued me. He desired me. He cherished me. And not just when I was following Him, but even when I was running from Him. Even He loved me in spite of who I was. He showed me that He loved me while I was in my mother's womb. And He could not turn loose of me And then he would pursue me to the end of the earth because he desired me so much. I never had understood a love like that. It blew me away. Well, that day was filled with a lot. And gaining God's perspective, I just wish we had time just to talk about that, about God's will. He gave me some perspective on his will. And that was just unbelievable. And I just got to tell you, he cared so much more about what I was becoming than what I was doing. Oh man, did that enrich my heart. It enriched my heart. But enough of that. Let me tell you, when the foundations of your life are shaken and you feel like the rug has been pulled out from under you, everything has been pulled out from under you, you better have some promises and truths that you can stand on. And I was able to stand on some of his truths and promises that day. Trusting in his provision. With the reality of the presence of God's Spirit within you. His comfort is more than even I could imagine. I don't know if you remember the show Touched by an Angel, and with Tess and Monica and Andrew, the three angels, and you remember them? Well, I'll tell you that the show wasn't all that theologically sound, but maybe for purposes of an example, I can use it and get by here. Let me tell you, who I liked when I watched it, it was Andrew. I liked Andrew, and he was kind of I don't know if you remember him, but he was the angel of death. And does that sound morbid? It shouldn't. But let me tell you about Andrew. He got to know you through the show, and he got to know one of the characters in the show. But he was the angel of death, and so when it came time for someone to die, remember the light came on and this kind of thing. But you know what? The person wasn't fearful of dying because they'd gotten to know Andrew through the show, and God began to show me that he'd sent me an Andrew, his Spirit. If I take the time to get to know him, depend upon him and trust him, that he could show me through. And that when death came, it wouldn't be scary. It'd be going home to a friend. Well, I would like to tell you everything has been rosy, but that would be a lie. The progression of the disease, although has been slower on me than in most, it has taken its toll. It continues to ravage through my body, my upper body, my lower body. I can walk a short distance, but not very far. People say, well, John, you look great. And I am. And I feel great until I have to move. It's just when I have to move that things are kind of tough. Or turn a page that things are kind of tough. Or pull up the covers that Margaret does for me at night. It's taken its toll. And I had plenty of people that said, John, you need to go and do, and I had doctors and some of my legal staff and said, John, you need to go, and you've got the resources, you can go and travel. Have fun while you still can. Because therein is real living. But you know what? I'm here to share with you today something. That's not real living. Yeah, I have the resources. I can travel the world. I've seen a lot of it. I have the resources to do just about anything I want to do. But God's shown me what real living is about. You see, real living isn't traveling. Real living isn't about going out and having fun. Real living isn't about graduating from seminary. Real living is walking with God. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Is walking with God. Incredible. And then to have the opportunity to share it with others. Oh, it's mind-boggling. Walking with God. Now that is a real trip. That's what real living is about. Let me just share with you a few minutes of what walking with God sort of looks like to me. What it's been like. It is sometimes difficult to explain, particularly on short notice or during short time together. I'd like to paint a little picture of what walking with God is like, what He brings into your life as you do so. Because I'll tell you, I had an above average Christian walk with God before my diagnosis. And I was considered a leader, and people came to me for advice. And poor folks. But let me tell you what walking with God looks like. First of all, it began with me by understanding God's love for me and His presence with me. His love that wanted to come into my heart and heal the woundedness. A love that wanted to come in and show me my true identity and who I really was. He gave me a perspective of myself, but that really only came after I began to have a true perspective of Him and His desire for me and His pursuit of me and His intention of me and the value that I have for Him, that He has, that I have for Him. I'm going to get that right in a minute. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. His ability, when you finally begin to realize that God is on your side, when you finally begin to realize that if you're hearing condemnation, it's not Him. If you're hearing judgment, it's not Him. Conviction, maybe, yes? Oh, my goodness. To find out that my heart was really good. He wanted the best for me. To begin to walk in freedom. Freedom from false belief systems. You know, my value really wasn't dependent upon my performance. I'd been taught that, but I didn't believe it. And to realize that I had value just because I breathed and took up space. The freedom that began to bring into my heart. Walking with God. Walking with God. You see, so much of my life had been about pursuing knowledge of God. And I pursued it to the end. But when I encountered God, everything changed. Because I really could begin to get things from my head to my heart And it made such a difference in my life. You know, I've now been asked many times, John, would you go back? Would you ever go back the way things used to be? You know, above average Christian walk, good health. Would you go back? I have to tell them without even hesitating. No. I won't go back. I'll take what I have today, any day of the week, even facing what I have to face ahead, in order to walk with my God. It's such a fantastic place to be. You see, it took me a little longer than it does some. And I had to really begin to start dying before I really started living. And I found out that real living was walking with God and then sharing that walk with others and showing other people how to do the same thing. My purpose today when I came here was to share a little bit of that picture of that walk with you. I hope God has spoken something into your heart today. One of my favorite verses in Scripture, post-diagnosis, is found in 2 Corinthians 4, verses 16 through 18. Therefore, we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporal, but what is unseen is eternal. Your walk with God may be an unseen part, but it is eternal. And what begins to happen to you is absolutely remarkable. Because you see, as your God touches you, as Jesus Christ comes in, he begins his transformation process, his restoration process with the Father. And oh my goodness, when that begins to happen, his power shows up in the form of your transformed heart and that of others. And others will begin to see it. And they'll want to know what's going on with you as you begin to look more like the Son. Because as part of our identity, we have sonship and co-heirship. Man, I can say those words, and to some of you, that just is almost anesthetized to you because you can't even feel it. But I know what sonship is. I know what co-heirship is today, and I won't trade for it. Well, I'm going to close the book. Close the final chapter. Well, we're not quite to the final chapter, but we're getting close. Only God knows when we're going to close the book. It did take me a while before I really began to walk with God, and walk with God with intensity that I do today. I had to wait till I was starting to die. Don't wait till you're dying before you start living. Thank thank you for allowing me to be here today. God bless.